Howdy everybody, Brian here from quantlabs.net. Just wanted to go through the book that I've been reading for the last couple of weeks. This book here, it is called Hands-on Machine Learning with Scikit and TensorFlow. I have to say it is a great book for foundation. You can see here with the high set of reviews. I think it's well worth the money, and if you're new to machine learning, this is the way to go to read it. It gives you a very good ground or foundation to work from. Okay, so before we get to that, I just wanted to go over my blog here. I posted, and actually my Facebook page as well, quantlabs.net, how to attack machine learning in trading room Zoom meeting webinar. So I'm putting this Monday, May 6th, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it's going to be a Zoom. All the information's here. You can just look it up again on my blog at quantlabs.net/blog. How to attack machine learning and trading Zoom meeting webinar. All right. So what are some of the topics that we'll be covering? From what I read in this book, the ones where you can use machine learning is in RNN or Recurrent Neural Network. Specifically, and I've seen this before, is long-term short memory models, deep neural networks, and last chapter is reinforcement learning. The question, when you go out and use a framework like Google TensorFlow, are you going to build your own GPU rig, or are you going to put it on the cloud? From what I read, and you can put it up on all the major cloud service providers, AWS, Azure, Google. Apparently it's not very cheap, so GPU rig may be the better option, but some of these simulations and training can take a couple of days. So be aware of that. And then the other thing is, the book covers TensorFlow 1, because TensorFlow 2 is not officially out yet, but the alpha is, and go over some of the training resources for Google TensorFlow 2, just to throw away the concept of going through the unnecessary learning of TensorFlow 1, which, believe me, is not fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the table of contents, just give you my overview here at the publisher, O'Reilly.com. So here we go. I'm going to do my best here. So you have an end-to-end machine learning project. It's some housing project regarding California. It just gives you a quick high level of what's involved. You use these classifiers and different demos of it, of how to use handwriting from this database here, or this data set, big one. So much in here. And then the big step that you'll be putting in is training models, so different techniques, which you say linear regression is pretty popular, gradient descent, polynomial regression, logistic regression is another one. These are popular ones that are mentioned in the book, the pros and cons of each of the other ones here. So he moves into support vector machines, the different concepts, the different types, linear, nonlinear, using aggression, decision trees. I can't remember this one a whole lot, but I would imagine it's pretty important, obviously. Using these entropy and impurity. I think entropy is the more popular one. The different kind of complexity to speed up the entire process, including the training when you run it. All these hyper parameter regularization parameters, and different weightings and different scaling parameters you can use. It's pretty good because he goes through the behind the scenes under the hood on the math front, which is really good. So you don't just rely on the math per se, but understand the behind the scenes or under the hood of what the math involves. So and then moves into all these different classifiers, and random forest is the big one. Obviously, ensemble learning, merging different types of neural nets together. Dimensional reduction to speed up things. PCA is a popular one. Not even going to get into these, so I'm not so expert here. So this is now the meat of it, the neural nets and deep learning. So first thing first is you understand how, up until this point, chapter 9, you're using Scikit-Learn. You realize how simple it is. Excuse me. But then you get more complicated by setting up your TensorFlow simulations. So he shows you the different techniques of setting it up. And this one, the chapter 10, artificial neural net. Actually, this training a deep neural net. So this is, I believe, a standard neural net or an artificial neural net. With this deep neural net business and how to use different parameters to fine tune it with these hyper parameters. And then, as I said, chapter 11 covers deep neural nets. All the popular stuff that you would expect is in this book, but it gives you a lot of confidence in the terminology. That's all I was reading it for, was just to understand what is what in terms of terminology. So I'm not going to get into this. Obviously, you have some different ways to optimize and how to prevent overcomplicating things. There's always a balance, a pro and con of each one. Now, this was an interesting one, distribution TensorFlow across devices and servers. So if you're spanning your simulation through GPUs, he does a pretty good job through clustering or different types of GPU units. Here, generally I don't think you'd be using, for chapter 13, a lot of convolutional neural nets. From what I read, this is more for image processing. That's pretty well its technique. I will say the deep neural net, that's probably the most widely used in machine learning that I've seen. And that's where you're going to spend a lot of time. Once you hit this chapter, you see how complicated it gets really fast up until this point, if you're not used to the math or the multi-threading and whatnot you need. As I said, the combinational neural nets for images. Recurrent neural nets is interesting because I've heard about LSTM, long short-term memory, and this is where a lot of the machine learning is for, because I believe it's built for time series, meaning financial data. So this is the most applicable in the world of finance. Deep RNNs, training them, and so on and so forth. Auto-Encoders is an interesting one. I think that's kind of complicated in itself. PCI, I know that's kind of used throughout some financial, but I think the best thing to do is to use these, or the whole book is just a general usage, reading what it is if you're new to all this, to prevent yourself from pulling your hair out, basically. It's good for that. I mean, this book is really good even for more advanced stuff. But, you have a lot of resources out there online to narrow in these topics, which I plan to do. Obviously, everything's done in Python as well. Now, reinforcement learning is another one that's potentially used for is used for financial somewhere in here. Where you see these games built out, this Q learning, deep Q learning, any Atari game supposedly. Markov chain is another one of decision processes, uh, and building all these policies as well. Pretty interesting stuff. Now, when you get into the appendices, these are the answers, so it's kind of like a course. So that's good if you go that route. For me, if you're really into the math, this is it in the appendices. These are all the different other types of techniques that you can use, and concepts outside of what you already know, and other popular ANN architectures as well. So they cover some of the other techniques here. I haven't heard of these before, so obviously they're not in, we'll say, in the mainstream. So overall, it's an excellent book. As I said, you want to build a foundation. This is where to start. Kind of glad I was directed towards this, so I saved myself a lot of time and pain. I'll be reading 2 other books that are older. But if you want more modern stuff, this is the way. And I believe there's now a newer version at $80. It includes both these frameworks, the Scikit-Learn and TensorFlow, but there's a newer one that just came out a few weeks ago called Keras, with Keras. But again, I think if you're planning to use TensorFlow 2, from what I've seen, it's radically changed between TensorFlow 1 and 2. So you may want to just stick with the basics. But if you want to have an appreciation of how TensorFlow 1 works, this is your combo to get. On that, hopefully I answer all your questions here. And we shall talk to you later. Thanks for watching.